then, let's give this another try. Hi everyone, my name is Amanda and today I have a really exciting video to share with you guys because I haven't been keeping up with my monthly wrap-ups, which I'm sure you've noticed, and therefore I thought that I would compile everything that I've read recently over the last 3 months maybe into one video and just do a little mini review thing where I just talk very briefly about the books that I've read, and then we can maybe discuss them in the comments, or if you've read any of them, please share your opinions. All the longer reviews that I've made on Goodreads will be of course listed in the description box below, but yeah, without further ado, let's get started! So the first book I read after finishing No Country for Old Men, which was the last book that I talked about in my previous wrap-up, was Illness as Metaphor and AIDS and Its Metaphors by Susan Sontag, which are 2 essays on how we use illness in metaphor when we speak or write, and how that then becomes damaging to people who have those illnesses, and how that affects how we perceive them, even though we might not think about it. And I just thought that she had a really interesting point of view, and it was not something that I thought about before, and I think that it's quite important to think about what we are really saying when we say something, and I think that she touches upon that quite well in this book. I still feel like this was very well written and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it and I thought that she had a really interesting point of view. The next book I read after that was Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, and I really enjoyed this book, and it was surely creeping me out. It was really unnerving, but it's so beautifully written, and it follows Humbert, and he is a pedophile and he falls in love completely with Lolita, but she's a really young girl. But it's all about their relationship and their lives, and I think that it's so interesting that Humbert is such an unreliable narrator, because he's telling the story from prison a few years later, and I just think that this book is so interesting. I completely fell in love with Nabokov's writing, and I would really recommend this book to everyone because I think it's really good and I loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and Nabokov has become one of my favorite writers, like, ever. The next book I picked up was The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and I had not read this before because I had always associated it with school and school-related things, and I just think that that gave it kind of a negative connotation. I wanted to pick it up, I wanted to see what it was all about, and I ended up really enjoying it actually. I thought that Fitzgerald just writes really beautifully, and the story is really interesting, and it was not boring in any way. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I just think that if someone out there thinks like me that it's just a boring book that you have to read for school, then you're so wrong, because I think this book can be read by anyone at any age for any purpose, and I thought it was great. I enjoyed it. The next book I read was Kärleken by Jonas Gardell, or translated into English, The Love by Jonas Gardell, and this is the first book in a trilogy about AIDS and the AIDS epidemic that came to Stockholm in the 1980s. And just some backstory: Jonas Gardell is a famous TV personality. He is a writer and he is openly gay. He's one of the more prominent faces outwards for the LGBTQ community in Sweden, and this book follows multiple gay males moving to and living in Stockholm during the 1980s when the AIDS epidemic hits, and it's all about their relationships and how they are affected by this illness, and how Sweden just in general tries to handle this because it's not pretty. And Jonas Gardell with his writing shows how it was not pretty at all, and the writing is just so sincere, and there's a sadness to it that I can't really describe. And I've read books by him before, and there's this special quality to his writing that I can't really describe, and I would recommend this book. This is such an important book, it's an important story, and I think that more people need to read books like this. So the next book I read was The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien, and I completely fell in love all over again with this series. The writing style is just so incredibly beautiful, and I've heard that you either love or hate Tolkien, and I definitely love him. I loved almost everything about this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It's one of my new favorite novels of all time. And although it is quite of a slow burner, the language is just so engaging, so I didn't mind at all, and I thought that it was freaking amazing. Then came the Booktubeathon, and I didn't do too well. I failed quite miserably, to be honest. But that's okay, and I did read one really great book, and that was Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I did a full review of this book, which I will leave a link to in the description box, but I think that this book also tells this important story because it's about race and racism and just how we treat each other. It's about insecurity and identity and just life. It follows Ifemelu and Obinze, and I butchered their names even worse in the review, so don't worry. But this book was so great. They live in Nigeria, and Ifemelu moves to America while Obinze stays in Lagos, and it's just about how their lives evolve differently and how Ifemelu comes in contact with race and racism in America. And the author just discusses her themes very well, and I thought that this book had some really important things to say, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I would recommend this book, and I think that it's definitely worth reading because it does pack a punch and it has an important message. After reading Americanah, I of course continued on with The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien, and I don't have much to add with this book except that I think that he manages the pacing of the novels really well, and they are on the slower side, but still they never ever get boring because you have the amazing language, you have the interesting characters. I just think that they are amazing. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I thought the first one was better though, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it. I want to continue on with the series as soon as possible, and I don't know why I didn't read it sooner. So the next book I read was Pale Fire by Vladimir Nabokov, and like I said, I completely fell in love with Vladimir Nabokov, and this book was no exception. I thought that it was so interesting because it's constructed like this. You have a foreword written by a man called Charles Kinbote, and then you have a 999 line poem by a man called John Shade, and then there's also a commentary to this poem written by Kinbote. And they are both fictional characters, and it's so interesting because the poem is an autobiographical poem, and it's about John Shade's life. And then Kinbote, who knew John Shade, writes a commentary to this poem, and he completely misinterprets it because he thinks that it's all about himself, and he just adds so many comments, and it becomes a narrative, and you get to know these characters really well and their lives and their personalities, and it's really funny. I thought that it was really well done. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because I think that the construction is just amazing. The execution is so great. So the last book that I've read recently, I guess, is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, and this is an historical fiction novel about 2 women who live in France and how they are affected by the Second World War. You have Vienne, who is forced to live with a German soldier in her house, and you have her sister Isabelle, who wants to fight for the French resistance, and it's all about women's strength in war. It celebrates the resilience of the human spirit and the durability of women, and I think that this book did that very well. But I had some points that I kind of didn't enjoy about it. I thought that she was trying a bit too hard in the beginning, the author I mean, and the characters and their dynamics just didn't feel too believable. I enjoyed it, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Whew, that was all the books that I've read recently, quite a lot of them to be honest, and I have been keeping up with my reading this summer, which I haven't been able to do for quite a while. Have you read any of these books? Then please leave a comment telling me your thoughts about them and what are you currently reading? Are you enjoying it? I would love to know, and I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye!